Good afternoon, it's Wednesday, and welcome to another Build the Ghostbusters Ecto-1. This week we are on Stage 8, which is continuing the engine block and building from there. This is our kit for the week, minus the screws that I've already put off to the side. There is another set of tweezers in here, so that's nice. I've got 3 different sets to work from now. And there is one small bit of hose, which I've got a piece of wire off the side. Just a tiny little piece of wire that I will fit in there if needed. So without further ado, we will get started today by opening this tray up. So we're actually starting with some pieces left over from last week, which is exhaust headers, and that's going to get attached to the cylinder head. This is all plastic, I think, this week. I don't believe there's any die cast in this week's parts. So this is secured initially with some AP screws. I'll get a few of those out. Now, this is very similar to what we did with the other side of the engine block. There's 3 tabs. They fit in slots on the cylinder head. Not a whole lot of fuss there. It's just going to go like that and be secured on the back side with AP screws. Alright, and like I say, pretty straightforward cylinder head with an exhaust header on it. Next up, we have a little bit of a wire loom, and again, this is not different from last time. There's a very small wire loom, and it has a hook on the side. There's also a notch here. This just sits in there loosely until I get the cylinder head cover on, which is, again, identical, symmetrical to the other side of the engine block. Cadillac cylinder head cover. So, I just got to balance these a little bit, because I do need 4 BP screws. Okay, so this is the fiddly bit for a moment. It's not too bad once I get this in place. That will get screwed in a moment, but it gets held on by that head cover. And like I said, 4 BP screws to secure. Alright, so that's the cylinder head attached, and this is now going to go on to the engine block piece we had left over from last time. And this is going to be secured with 2 more AP screws. This just sits on top and is attached from the underside. Okay. So that is that together. Next, this is going to be attached to the engine block that we have built up to this point with 2 more DM screws. Just get those out here. Now this takes a little bit of fiddling. I've already test fit this before, but I'll have to get it back together again to make all of this go in. Whew, okay, so a little bit of fiddling. There it is. Now I just got to secure that. Oh, and I've dislodged the dipstick on this side. There's another dipstick. This has got to be the oil one here on the side. There's another one coming up today, which I believe is the transmission fluid dipstick. And that will probably be equally difficult. But in the meantime, we will get this attached with the 2 DM screws. I may need to use the other screwdriver for this, because again, these are deep wells, and yeah, not going to work with this guy. Now, unfortunately, the screwdriver they provided here is not magnetic. So what I'm going to try to do is fit these that way. Okay, so engine block is now there. That's the body of it. We've got some accessory pieces, obviously, like the DeLorean. We're going to have to get the belts to run the water pumps, all of that. And we're going to build more of this ignition system today, but not fit all of the cables yet. So, next step that we have is putting together some of the small pieces before they go on here. We're going to start by assembling the fuel pump and filter, if I can figure out which pieces are which. I believe this is the first piece. This is going to be the third or fourth piece. Third piece. And there's a bracket. This has got to be it. So to start, little bracket. That is going to attach to this fuel pump body, which I believe will go on the other half of the fuel pump that we've already put in. And these two pieces will make up more of it. Okay, so first off, we need to get AP screws again. And that will secure the bracket to the body of this. They have given me a locating pin that helps. It's not a tight enough fit to hold it together, but it does get the orientation right. Which on these tiny little pieces, a pin holding the orientation in place for you, geez, that really helps. So that tiny assembly here is the bracket and pump body, and held on with that AP screw. Next, we are going to put these two pieces together. There is a keyway, so that while they go together, keyway keeps it from rotating too much. I'm going to get an FP screw ready. These are quite a bit longer, very thin, long screws. Because that FP screw has to go through this piece that I've just assembled and that bracket and line everything up. Okay, so this is a very small little assembly made of 4 pieces here. FP screws on the bottom, holding that all together. This is now going to sit on top of the bit of fuel pump that we built before. Again, keyed so that it doesn't rotate. There's a cap that's going to go on. Again, keyed. Nice of them to do this. And a last, maybe not last, but another BP screw will go through to secure all this together, sandwiched onto the engine. Again, all these pieces stack up, but they're keyed so that you can't screw it up too badly. I'm sure you can. I'm sure you can break any of these pieces if you try. Okay. So that is our fuel pump and filter right up here on top of the engine block. On to step 5. Step 5 is the ignition coil, which again we have to assemble. In this case, I think we're just pushing 3 pieces together. We have the very small body of the coil, and I believe these tiny little pieces in here. Some of them, not even all of them. Now it's an opportunity to get these tweezers out. That last piece is part of the starter, and we will get to that. So first off, the open end of this, there's a tiny little cap. Very small little cap. And that's going to go in the open end of this ignition coil. Just cap it off. Snaps on. Clean looking, no problem. And then this other incredibly small piece, which I will try to hold up this way. That is just going to go on the end of the ignition coil to provide an outlet. Ignition coil. That is going to be secured on top of our engine block with another BP screw. And that is going to go somewhat near the distributor. Now there is a pin on the underside, if you can see. Probably can't. There's a pin, again, helps locate this. The pin goes in one hole, screw goes in the other, so that you don't have to figure out the alignment for yourself. So here on top, ignition coil, that's the distributor assembled a while ago. This is, I believe, going to get cabled together towards the end of what we're doing here. So now I have a bag, entire bag of spark plugs, and those have to go in. There's a long end and a short end, and I believe that the short end goes in and the long end sticks out. So we will carefully extract these onto the countertop here. Should be 8 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. You know, the picture makes it look like it's going to be hard to fit these, but actually this is a pretty accessible spot on the engine if my hands will function. So, each of these goes in like that into one of these holes. The tweezers might be helpful just for fitting these down. So, I've just got to fit 7 more. Halfway there, now we're going to go on to the other side. Okay, so that's both sides spark plugs installed. Had a little hiccup with one of the holes, needed to be reamed out a little bit, and a couple of the plugs not quite sitting down all the way in until a second or third push, but no big issue there. So, next is installing, I don't know what it is, but it's part of the distributor. Little silver, very chromy piece. It's just going to go on that tab that's been sticking out of the distributor. And I believe that there's no difference between up and down looking at it. So we'll just push that on. Okay. So that's it attached to the distributor. Next is the, what I believe is the transmission dipstick. And that just goes on here behind that, near the transmission case. That one fits very nicely. I like the fit of this one much more than I like the fit of the other dipstick. This is a much more secure one, though the other one now is crowded around enough that it shouldn't really be an issue. I don't think anything should jostle it once I get these last cables installed. But it's still just looser than I like because of the shape of the fit. Okay, now this is the part that's like the DeLorean. I have a bag of 8 distributor extensions, distributor outlets to install. So, yay. This is going to be fun. We'll just get these in. So, bear with me. And they just kind of go in a star pattern. Okay. Actually, these might be quite a bit easier than the DeLorean ones. They're both physically a bit bigger and a slightly better fit. Okay, so it turns out there's actually 9 of these. There's 8 for the distributor and a 9th that goes back to this ignition coil. And that goes on the top facing towards the front of the engine. Okay, so that was fun. Now they want me to put, in this case, this nice translucent blue cable between them. And like I said, I think this is where I will use my bit of wire. This is what I did to improve the ignition cables on the DeLorean as well. I just bought a few different sizes of wire, settled on this is a very light 28 gauge. It's quite a bit smaller than it needs to be. But because of that, it also is very flexible, so it was easy to shape. So we start out by getting the length that is about the same as the tube. Then we're just going to come in here and cut a little bit off so that it's short enough to fit without interfering with the plastic. We'll just check that fit. These are fairly long pegs that are going into this too, so I think that will be okay. I'm going to take a tiny bit more off. So this is now a shorter length of wire than the hose piece itself. So that will give it some stiffness and allow me to bend it while also not interfering with the plug area itself. This is definitely a place where the tweezers help. And then it's going to go from the ignition coil here to that top distributor point. And now that that's in, I can try to straighten out this cable a little bit so that it looks good. So there we go. We got a little bit of stiffness on that, and that gives it a little bit more of a real shape. Not perfect, I may tweak it later, but for the time being, there we go. That's the part I was most worried about today, honestly. Those distributor elements are tiny. These were much better than the DeLorean, just I think because of their size. So, we have 3 small pieces left to install, all making up the starter. The first is the body of the starter and the bracket, all as one piece. That is going to be attached with a BM screw. So this goes on the side that has no dipstick, which is the side currently towards me. Okay, that's an interesting location. So this has to fit in between the transmission and the rest of this. This would have been much easier before the oil pan was installed. There is a pin holding the one end, and then a screw for the other. This is a case where extending this screwdriver should help. Okay, so there we go. Motor mount on the side, starter motor mount. Next we have a core piece that's going to go in here. And that's going to be attached with an AP screw at the back end. So that just fits in and is secured with a AP screw. Okay, with that fit in, this motor is no longer hollow. I don't know how well that comes through on the camera because it's all black. There's a little bit of detailing on there. And the last piece for today is the solenoid on the motor, which was in that first bag that I had to take 2 out of 3 pieces out of. So, very small motor solenoid. And this is going to be attached to the body with a, what type of screw? A BP screw, one more BP. Now, again, there's a pin to help hold this on, and then the screw is going to go into the body itself. So the pin fits from the front, and the screw comes in from the back. So this will take, again, a little bit of fiddling and 2 hands. Okay, so there is the starter motor and the solenoid on top. And again, there's the extra bit that fills out the starter motor. So, that is it for Stage 8 this week. We've got quite a bit of engine built. Next week is more engine, I believe. Air filter following that is, carburetor and air filter, and then more oil filter and the generator, because it's an old enough engine, I guess, that it has a generator instead of an alternator. But that will be next Wednesday and the Wednesday following. And then after that, hopefully we'll have some more parts in. So, we do the Ghostbusters Ecto-1 on Wednesdays. We have the DeLorean from Back to the Future for Saturdays, and there's a few other videos on the channel that you can check out if you're interested. So, have a good one, guys.